Hi everyone, welcome to my reading wrap up for the month of January. Hi everyone, welcome to Book Talks with Miss Thomas. I'm Miss Thomas, this is Truffles. She hasn't been feeling well lately. We saw the vet yesterday and hopefully she'll be on the mend soon, but she's here. If you are new and you like hearing about books, please subscribe. And if you are returning, welcome back. I'm going to try something a little different in this video. I tinker with my green screen a little bit. It looks weird, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep it and see what people think. And then I do some vlogging. I talk about different books throughout the month. So in this video, or this particular clip of today's video, I want to tell you about going rogue. I went on a road trip with my family, and I said in a previous video that my family liked the Janet Evanovich, not my youngest, he wasn't really interested, but my husband and my son, they would tolerate the Stephanie Plum series, Janet Evanovich books. And so I started listening to some of them on the road trip, and I heard after listening to one that she was coming out with a new one called Going Rogue. And so I found that book and listened to that, and I really enjoyed it. So tell you about her latest book, Going Rogue. If you're not familiar, the Janet Evanovich Stephanie Plum series is the series featuring Stephanie Plum, who is a bail bondsman, or she gets people who have skipped out on bail in New Jersey. And she works with these two other women, Lyssa, who's a really literally a colorful character. I mean, she always has bright colors and crazy outfits and different hair. And Connie is the woman running the office. And this is New Jersey, you know, so it's just a really fun series about, you know, women going after the bad guys. And in this particular one, Going Rogue, it's Janet Evanovich's latest addition to the Stephanie Plum series. And what happens in this particular book is that Connie is kidnapped by these bad guys, and they are seeking a coin that they gave to Stephanie Plum's cousin, the bail bondsman. I think his name is Vinny. And so they are seeking the coin that they gave, and they think that that Stephanie Plum has it, and she should be able to get it back to them. And in exchange, they would give her back Connie. And so Stephanie Plum can't get any support from her cousin. He's, you know, kind of a jerk, and he doesn't really care. So she goes rogue. She goes out looking for this coin. And of course, there are appearances from Ranger, the guy that has the security agency that helps her. And then there's her police officer boyfriend, Morelli. But what's really fun about this particular series is her grandma goes rogue with her, but also Morelli's grandma ends up going rogue with her. And if you've read any of these Stephanie Plum books, you know that Stephanie Plum's grandmother and Morelli's grandmother, these elderly women in New Jersey, they hate each other because Stephanie Plum's grandmother always gets a particular cookie at the viewings and the funerals, and Morelli's grandmother likes that cookie, and she just does it to annoy Morelli's grandmother. So those two have a rivalry, and they are really funny in this book. And if you know Morelli's grandmother from any of these books, she's always giving people the eye, you know, and she says, I'm going to give you the eye and make you poop your pants, you know, and this like hardened criminal poops his pants, and he's like, well, that was just a coincidence, you know. It's just very silly, funny scenes with the grandmothers. Both grandmothers were very funny. So, of course, Stephanie Plum has to balance her relationship, her romantic interests of Morelli and Ranger. That doesn't really appeal to me too much, but there was no heaving or anything like that. There was a little bit of romance, not too much. The thing I loved was Stephanie Plum trying to, you know, take down the bad guys so she could get Connie back safely, and the grandmothers that were involved in the helping. Also, this is a coin that is from a game. And so there's a lot of these like nerdy gamers that, you know, they're like middle-aged men that are really into games, and they get mixed up in this. And so they were kind of sweet and cute. That made it a fun little addition to the book. So I really liked Going Rogue. It wasn't deeply thought-provoking, but it was just a light, fun audiobook. So I really liked the Bromance Club, and I saw a very merry bromance, and I didn't quite get it in time for Christmas, but I thought, well, I'll still get it when it arrived. It was on my Libby app, and when it arrived, I listened to it this month. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. You know, it definitely was not as good as the Bromance Club, but it was good enough to finish. It was the story of Colton, a country music singer who falls in love with this lawyer, and she's an immigration lawyer, and come to find out she's also an heiress to a very wealthy fortune. And she rejects Colton for whatever reason. Come to find out it's because they're all in the same friend group, and she doesn't want things to get awkward, so she'd rather not really get too involved in him, but it's too late because there's a chemistry there. So there's this tension, you know, in that these two people are romantically attracted to each other, they belong together, and yet, you know, the girl is resisting it. So that was, I guess, part of the plot. I found it annoying. And there's also her family was just horrible. You know, she walked away from her family fortune to be a lawyer because her family was not very nice. And so there's a conflict there, you know, with her and her family that, you know, needs to be addressed in the book, and, you know, does get addressed. And, you know, the thing I did like about it was the hijinks with the Bromance Club. You know, there is a little bit of a guest appearance in the book from the different Bromance Club members. I definitely, that's why I got the book in the first place. I like the antics of the guys. And I especially liked this Russian guy who ends up having to play Santa at a Christmas party. I liked him. I thought he was fun. So it was okay, maybe 2 or 3 stars. It was good enough to finish, but not as good as the Bromance Club. So I'm out and about, and it makes sense that while I'm on the road, I should tell you about I Was Told This Would Get Easier by Abby Waxman. Now, I loved another book by Abby Waxman called The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. I have it in my most recommended funny books of 2020. And so this one I was really looking forward to. And for that reason, I was disappointed. Have you ever done that? You really love a book by an author, and then you get it and it just doesn't meet your expectations. It was good. It just wasn't great. And I will tell you briefly, the story is about a mother and a daughter on a road trip, and they are going to colleges. The daughter is, you know, getting ready to graduate from a private school. The mother is this boss attorney. You know, she's like partner in this law firm, and she's just a power woman, and she's a Columbia graduate. And so she naturally expects her daughter to go to the best possible college and also become, you know, a boss woman. And the daughter doesn't really want that for herself, and she's not sure how to tell her mother. So that's the first thing, is the daughter's internal conflict of she doesn't even really want to go to college, and she's on this road trip. There's also something that happened at the daughter's school that hits the fan right before they leave for the trip. And so the daughter struggles with whether or not to tell her mother, and, you know, is her mother going to find out while they're on this road trip? The mother, she deals with tremendous sexism in the job as a lawyer, and she wants this woman to be promoted to partner, and the partner of the law firm said no, he is not going to promote her because he's concerned about the hashtag Me Too movement, which is a really, you know, bad reason to deny someone a promotion. So she gets angry and says, either promote her or I quit. And then she takes off for the road trip. So both mother and daughter have different things going on in their personal lives. They have internal conflicts that they are grappling with as they're on this road trip together. And then, of course, there's the, mother-daughter relationship and having a teenage daughter. Now, that's one thing I cannot relate to. I have boys, but definitely the idea of, a mother and a teenage daughter and the conflicts they have is certainly a theme in the book. I thought the daughter was a bit of a brat. I wasn't really, she was a good kid. She made good choices, but she struck me as sort of a whiner. But again, I don't have teenage girls. I will say I appreciated that the book recognized that sometimes parenting is not fun. There's a sign in my childhood, my children's playroom. They've outgrown it, but the sign remains and it says, "Motherhood is not for wimps." And I do appreciate Abby Waxman putting that idea out there in her book, because as a former stay-at-home mom, I feel like there was a lot of expectation to appear as if, I love my mom, I love my life, I love being a mom, I love everything's perfect and coming up roses all the time. And the truth is, motherhood is a difficult job. It's not for wimps. And so I appreciated that was there in the book, and it sort of recognized that parenting is not always fun and not always easy. So, I guess if I had to give the book a rating, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 stars. But it was an audiobook. It was an enjoyable way to pass the time. It just wasn't the bookish life of Nina Hill. I want to talk about The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf. And that was a suspense thriller that I would recommend. And it features 3 different parallel plots. The first begins with Wiley Lark, who is an author, and she writes true crime novels. She rented a cabin in the middle of, it feels like nowhere, to write this novel about this unsolved murder. When she's staying there and it's snow, there's this dog that sort of adopts her, that she takes in, and the dog stays in the cabin. She lets the dog out, and the dog finds this little child in the snow. And she doesn't know who the child is or why the child has showed up on the property. So she takes in this child and tries to help the child. And there's no help, nearby. So she's just trying to care for this little child. Then there are 2 other parallel plots, and the other one is about this little girl named Josie, who has a sleepover with her friend, and she has this brother who's a teenager, and he gets into some trouble, and there's this murder in the middle of the night where Josie's family is murdered. Her parents are murdered, and her friend that was having the sleepover disappears, and the brother disappears. And so that's a mystery. We want to know what happened in that plot line. And then the third plot line is about this mother and this little girl who are living in a basement with this very abusive man who comes and goes as he sees fit. Sometimes he shows up, he brings food, and then he disappears for days at a time. And he is just, you start to, as the story unfolds, you get the sense that he's pretty abusive to the mother. I don't think that he ever really abused the little girl. If you're sensitive to child abuse, I don't think any child abuse is depicted, but the little girl witnesses some domestic violence. So if you're sensitive to that, there's a trigger warning there for you. But it wasn't overly graphic, certainly never glorified. And the 3 plots converge in a way that I thought was pretty interesting. I will say the book, as far as mysteries go, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the 3 different parallel plots, but I did find that it was pretty predictable. I felt like it was a pretty easy to solve mystery, but it was still enjoyable. So for that reason, I'd give it maybe 3.5 stars. So I also read Daisy Jones and the Sixth this month, and I was pretty disappointed. I did finish it. It was good enough to finish, but I just didn't think it was as good as her other books. In the book, it's the story of the rise of Daisy Jones, a fictional rock star, and the other people. It's the rise of the other people in the book as well, and how they rise together to stardom and then, you know, fall rather hard. So it's told from the various different points of view of multiple characters. I think my biggest problem with that book was that I didn't like any of the characters. Maybe Simone. I kind of like Simone okay, but I did not. Even the people that presented themselves as nice, I just wasn't buying it. And the story is, you know, Daisy Jones is pretty selfish, and, you know, she's all about, you know, herself and getting ahead. And I think we're supposed to admire that and like her. I'm not sure, but I personally don't think, you know, rising ahead means you step on whoever is in your way. I know it's a fictional book, but I didn't really get into the characters. And there was a lot of things about the lifestyle that, you know, I get it that they're rock stars, and so there's going to be a lot of wild parties and things like that. I loved Malibu Rising, and that book actually centers around a wild party that gets out of control. So I don't think it was the party so much. I think the characters in Malibu Rising had more moral fiber. They were more relatable for me personally, and I just couldn't relate to anyone in Daisy Jones and the Six. But it is told, it's about, it's a fictional story about a reporter who gathers various interviews about various people who were involved in the rise to stardom for this musical group that became very popular in, I think it was the 70s. It may have started in the 60s. And Daisy Jones, it starts out with her as a young teenager and ends with her as an older, you know, woman who's lived the life. So, I don't know. It wasn't for me. I definitely enjoyed other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I wasn't really a fan of Daisy Jones and the Six. So on January 31st, I finished my last January book, and that book was A Study in Scarlet Women. And that was the story of Sherlock Holmes as told by a woman. And it was a wonderful audiobook too. I really enjoyed the reader who read the book. She had a very breezy, fun style in which she read the story. And in that book, Sherlock Holmes is actually Charlotte Holmes, and it's, you know, 1800s, I believe, Scotland, and she does not want to marry. She wants to just have a career. She actually wants to be a headmistress of a school, but her family, of course, wants to marry her off. And she needs to find a way out of marriage because that's just not what she sees for herself. So she runs away. She ends up running away when she gets old enough and tries to make a living for herself. She just has all these different adventures as she's trying to find her way. And she has a gift for solving puzzles and, of course, solving mysteries. So originally it's puzzles when she's at home with her sister. She has a sister named Olivia that she's very close with. And after she runs off, she and Olivia write letters back and forth to each other. So Olivia remains a steadfast character in the novel. And she eventually befriends an elderly retired actress named, you guessed it, Mrs. Watson. So Charlotte and Mrs. Watson end up sleuthing and solving mysteries, but they have to do it under the guise of a man's name. And so they find various ways to try and make people think that there is a Sherlock Holmes, a man who is solving these mysteries, and Charlotte presents herself as his sister. It's just a lot of fun. It's the first book in a series, and in addition to the story of Charlotte Holmes and Mrs. Watson, there's, you know, mysteries that get solved. So there were at least 3 mysteries and a few little puzzles. And it was just a really fun book with a couple of different mystery plot lines. So I definitely ended my month on a high note. I really enjoyed that one. that's it. That's what I read in the month of January. I had a good reading month. I hope you did too. And I will continue to film the different things that I read in the month of February and let you know about them next month. Bye for now.